My name is Tyler Meddy, and I drive Jeeps. This is Foregone Trails, all about Jeeps, Jeep things, Jeep building, not Jeeps, camping, just stuff, whatever we kind of get into. But today, I'm going to talk a little bit about where Foregone Trails started, what got me into Jeeps, where we're at, and what I kind of hope to do with the channel. And this feels super professional, being in this like cool lit space, having the Jeep behind me. It's super exciting. So let's dive in. So Foregone Trails, it's something that I started with my dad originally. He took some time a while back, started building some teardrop trailers that were really off-road focused, along with rebuilding old Jeeps. So that was kind of the idea, is that we wanted to do something that was fun, taking the idea of the trail less traveled and going with the theme of Foregone Trails, you know, sticking with older vehicles, classic styling, those types of things, but adding modern flair whenever we could, and then really building it out that way. And so that was the idea coming into Foregone Trails, is that we are gonna do stuff that maybe isn't super common or popular anymore, but is still lots of fun, trying to get back to the classic heart of getting out, enjoying time with family, with friends, and those types of things. I've always grown up around Jeeps for as long as I can remember. That was what we did. My dad owned some CJ5s when I was a lot younger. He'd let me drive them. You know, you learn how to drive in the field, out and about, you know, back roads, that kind of thing. Just super fun. And so been in and around those Jeeps for a long time. And then when I got my first vehicle, I got a 94 Jeep Cherokee, and you know, you can't keep that thing stock for long. So we got it, $400, had a bad motor. We put a new motor into it. And then almost immediately after, I put a little lift on it, some 31-inch tires, then built front bumpers, built rock rails, built tire carriers, you know, all the fun things that you want to add to a Jeep when you first get one. And just really took it out, really enjoyed it a lot. Went to college. After that, I totaled it, you know, like most young drivers do. So that was awesome. And then I took that whole thing, had this awesome drivetrain, the wheels, the tires, all this great stuff, and found a two-wheel drive Cherokee, a 99, pulled everything over to it, drove it for a long time. I've always really loved Jeepsters, and that was kind of the passion vehicle that I really wanted to have, was a Jeepster Commando. But you know, at 16, it was really difficult to justify an old carbureted vehicle that doesn't have a lot of support. It was going to be difficult to work on and, you know, make reliable. And so the Cherokee really filled that void. And then, you know, you get to college, you have to be responsible. So I got rid of that, ended up giving it to my brother. He decided that he wanted to do something on his own. And so we actually sold that Cherokee to then buy the Jeepster that he drives now. And so that was kind of what spiraled into all of the Jeepsters that we've owned over the years now. He still has that one. We'll probably get together soon and put together a video of his Jeep. It's really cool. It's a 71 with an LS, a 5-speed. It's a really cool Jeepster. But that was our first kind of transition into the Jeepster world. And fast forward a little bit further, I was graduating college and thought, what do you do as a responsible adult? You take out a little bit of a loan as a, you know, gift to yourself, I guess, as a graduation gift. And I drove to Colorado, picked up the Jeepster you see behind me, brought it home, non-running, needed a gas tank, needed all kinds of work to it, but I was just so excited to have a Jeepster of my own. And so over the last 10 years or so, I've just continued to morph and change and spend money and make it what you see now. So got it, it was all original, paint, primer, a million different colors, no seats, the stock Buick 225, with the 3-speed behind it, stock axles, you know, the whole 9 yards. And so from there, I then transitioned it over to adding a fuel tank, figuring out some seats, tried 2 or 3 different seat options to figure out what I really liked to put in there, you know, and just drove it. We actually road tripped from Oklahoma all the way out to Nevada, where my dad lives. On the way there, I stopped in Amarillo. We picked up a 4-inch lift, installed it that summer. I did all this work, added power steering, a bunch of stuff that, you know, these things don't have, you know, power brakes, power steering. They don't have great front axles, so I put a CJ front axle. I did a bunch of different things to it. And then I get ready to drive it all the way back to Oklahoma, and the motor went out. So it stayed there for a number of years. Then I transitioned from that to trying to figure out what was next in the build, and I found a Buick 231, so an even fire Buick V6. I installed that, ran it for a little while. It went bad as well, if you were guessing. So this is now on the third motor. I've still got the Buick 231. I haven't spent over $100 on a motor, so that's, you know, maybe a good thing, maybe a bad thing. But this one seems to be working really well. I've got the Buick 231 in it. It's attached to a Muncie SM 465 with the Granny Low and a Dana 300 behind that. And so that's been a really nice setup. I did, after a while, get really tired of the carbureted setup. I'm not familiar with them. I didn't know how to make them work reliably. So this now has the Holley Sniper EFI on it, and it works great. It's been really reliable. Not a whole lot of issues. I do need to go get it actually, you know, tuned still, some of those things, but overall the drivetrain setup works really, really well. And I've been happy with it, especially for, you know, a couple $100 motors and a, you know, $1,200 fuel injection setup. I feel like it's been kind of the best of all worlds. And at the time I didn't have a whole lot of fabrication skills, so a full-blown motor swap, those types of things just was kind of out of the question for me as well. So that was the drivetrain selection I kind of ended up going with. You know, there's a few things you had to swap out for that. Around that same time, we did the 50th Jeepster Commando event in Moab, Utah, and we took my brother's Jeepster out. He still had the 230, he had the 225 in his at that time, and we realized it was underpowered. You know, the gears just weren't great, and so that was when I had to kind of figure out what I was going to do on my build, because I was still in the process of getting it back up and running. And so I found a set of Toyota axles. I know. It's Toyota. It's a Jeep. Listen, I can hang out with the Toyota guys and the Jeep guys now. So, you know, it's a win. You fit in nowhere, you know, but you fit in everywhere at the same time. So I ended up picking up a set of FJ80 axles that had already been narrowed to a CJ width, and they basically bolted right up in the front. And we just had to move some leaf spring perches in the rear, and it went right in. 456 gears, E-lockers front and rear, large disc brakes in the front. So it checked all the boxes. The price was right, and again, not having a whole lot of fabrication skill, the ability to just kind of bolt it right in was really appealing to me. And so that's where I got those axles. That's why I have these Toyota FJ80 axles under here as well. And then from there, it's just kind of snowballed. I did the paint and body work in the garage, raised the rear fenders to, you know, keep that stock body line. You know, kind of been teaching myself how to do a lot of this. And, you know, it's not perfect, but it's a user. I really enjoy taking it out, and I didn't want it to be so nice that I was uncomfortable to put some scratches or dents into it. So, you know, it looks good in photos and videos, and that's enough for me. So that was kind of the whole process of getting into the Jeepster, getting this thing built out, and where I'm at today. My favorite upgrades to my Jeepster, and the biggest upgrades I think you can make to any Jeepster, are going to be the following. One, rewiring the entire thing. Get an actual, 12 circuit wiring harness, get that whole thing completely rewired. You will not regret it. The next thing that will be really great is power steering. These didn't come with power steering. I think that upgrade time and time again just proves to be a phenomenal, worthwhile upgrade. Power brakes right behind that. I think if you can't do that, at least disc brakes, but the power brakes make a huge difference. The vacuum brakes are good. I actually have Hydro Boost brakes on this one, and I've done it now on all three of our Jeepsters have Hydro Boost brakes, and they seem to work great. I've been so happy with that. And so I would say power brakes, and those would be really the big pieces that I would start with on any of these Jeepster builds, is rewiring, power steering, power brakes. Those things make a huge difference on the drivability and enjoyability of these old Jeepsters. After having this one and learning a lot, some of the things that I would do differently, if I was to do it differently, would be really planning it out a lot more. You know, I built this thing as time and funds and skills allowed, and so I've learned a lot of new skills, a lot of fabrication. You know, that is one of the downsides to these Jeepsters, is there really isn't any aftermarket support for them. There's a couple companies out there that do a great job providing aftermarket support for them, but for the most part, there's nothing. You can't just go and buy a bolt-on kit for anything. And so everything's got to be custom done, custom fabricated. And so, you know, with the time I had, the money I had, the skills I had, you know, this is where I ended up with this particular build. But if I was to do it again, I think the big difference would be planning it out a little bit better, trying to understand, you know, the axle selection, the actual tire size that I would want to run as a finished product, you know, the different partnerings between motor and transmission selection, and some of those things I think I would make some adjustments to. But, you know, in the sake of ease and not a whole lot of skill of fabrication, I think this build turned out really nicely. You know, the motor, like I said, fits in the stock location, the transmission, cross member, and all of that. I actually got the cross member with the transmission, so that actually bolted up. I was lucky there. But, you know, a lot of those little things like that allowed this to kind of be what it is today. And I just kind of got what I could when I could. And so I think if I was to change something, it would be really planning out the partnering between everything. You know, these Toyota axles are great. If you talk to Toyota guys, they love these axles. They think they're the, you know, bee's knees. The FJ80 has a really huge center section. You know, they're really strong. All of those wonderful things. But being a Jeep guy, you're usually hanging out with other Jeep people when you go off-roading, and not a lot of people are carrying Toyota parts. So I have to carry all my own parts for, you know, anything that might break, because nobody else is really going to be carrying anything that's going to fit or support my vehicle. You know, similarly with the drivetrain, like I said, that Buick 231 is really nice. The Muncie 4-speed's nice too. Everything works well, but again, it's not very common. And so it allows me to then really have to lean in on my knowledge and my understanding of what I drive and carry all my own parts. You know, it's not something that a lot of people have extra parts for that they carry kind of as a universal piece. And so those are some things I think I would change, is moving it more to maybe a more universally accepted or utilized drivetrain selection. So that way parts and, you know, repairs and those types of things would be a lot easier to handle in the field. So next for this Jeepster, I've got to finish the top. I made a little safari top for it, cutting the sides off. And then I've now realized that in the winter, it's miserable to drive it because it's completely open. And so I am working to make some canvas sides for it and canvas back that I can easily remove and put back on, roll up, that kind of thing. So it's more of a convertible top. So that'll be the next thing I'll do to it. I need to do some work in the rear, adjust the shocks, get them working a little bit better. I would like to also swap the transmission out. I know I've talked a lot about how much I really like this SM465, but for whatever reason, I can't get the thing to quit leaking oil, and it leaks a lot of oil. And so I'm just kind of over it again too with that, is that the gearing wise, you know, 60 miles an hour is about as fast as it likes to go. And I would like to be able to drive this thing to the trails a little bit more. And so I actually have plans to do an AX15 with a doubler behind it in the Jeepster. So then I'll have the low gearing that I have now, along with an overdrive for highway speed. So that'll be the next step. And then after that, I've really been debating about reworking the front suspension, installing a 3-link, coilovers, that kind of thing, really tuning up the suspension in the front, making it a little bit smoother, more enjoyable. This is my Jeep. I've had it for a little over 10 years, and I don't plan on changing that ever. This is the first Jeep that I truly felt like I built from the ground up and learned so much on it. I just have this big emotional connection to it. You know, all the stories that are tied to it over the last 10 years, driving across the country with my brother, doing the FOREGONE Trail with my wife, and future trips and plans that I have with this, with my family and friends, that it's just, I think it's gonna be very hard for me to ever want to let go of this particular Jeep. There's a lot of things I would want done differently. There's lots of things that I want to try in the future. But that's where building other Jeeps and things of that nature, they'll just come and go, and I'll build them as I need them and as they fit my life. But this one's just constantly going to be there as long as I can keep it. Hope you enjoyed.